Hi.
Hello, everyone.
My name is Emily Susko. I'm the program coordinator for NOAA's Teacher at Sea program. And I've been in this role for about 10 years, working to send teachers out with our research scientists on a really unique summer experience that they can then bring back to their schools and their communities around the country. And then today we have Jenny. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Jenny Gapp. I'm a teacher librarian with Portland Public Schools, and I'll tell you a little bit more about me when we get to my part of the presentation.
Thanks. And so I figured I would open up our joint presentation with just a Teacher at Sea 101 for anyone who is, maybe you've heard of us, but you don't know too much about how we work. And so, like I said, I'm Emily Susko, and then the director of our program, Jennifer Hammond, works with me very closely on this. And then we have a couple other support folks who help with our alumni that I'll get to later. We have had Teachers at Sea since 1990. This is a picture of our very first teacher at sea, Deborah Mosher from Virginia. And we are currently housed in the Fisheries Office of Communications. So that's where I work. And I actually have part of my role is also communications portfolio. And as I mentioned, Jennifer Hammond is the director. I'm the program coordinator, which means I handle the like day-to-day operations of getting teachers to sea and back. And then we have another woman, Britta Culbertson, who manages our alumni association because we really do a lot to try to keep the teachers who participate in our program engaged with NOAA after they come back to shore. So we'd just like to tout an overview of what we've been up to since 1990. We have sailed more than 875 educators on NOAA and NOAA partnered research vessels. They've collectively spent more than 10,000 days at sea conducting more than 118,000 hours of ocean research alongside scientists. We really try to have our program be as immersive as possible and involve the teachers as much as practical in the ocean research. And then the teachers, when they're at sea, write blogs back to their students and their communities. And so we have a collection of more than 3,200 blog posts on our Teacher at Sea WordPress blog right now. To give you an idea of how we work throughout the year, we start really advertising our application in October. And then for the month of November, our online application is open to applicants. I'll get a little bit more into eligibility there. So we're accepting those. We're excited to be opening another application this fall. Last fall was the first new application we had since the pandemic started. And then we review the applications in December and January. January is also when we reach out to NOAA scientists and ships around the country to ask if they're interested in hosting a teacher. In early February, we notify the finalist educators that we've selected, and we also have them complete a medical review so that they're medically cleared to sail. And then in March, so what's going on right now is that we are determining placements for these cleared teachers or matching them up to available berths on NOAA research surveys. And then typically our teachers are sailing sometime between April and September every year. So who are our teachers at sea? We really try to have our program be as broadly available to educators in America as possible. So we do require teachers be full-time educators, and they must be U.S. citizens or lawful permanent residents. But beyond that, they can teach any grade level, preschool through college instructors. They can teach any subject. We attract a lot of science teachers, but we're not limited to science teachers. We've also sailed math, English, political science, history, art and music teachers, for example. And we're also open to informal educators who work at zoos and aquariums and museums and those sorts of settings. We are excited this year to be planning a season with 10 teachers whom we have selected from 9 states. And so right now, like I said, I'm in the process of determining where they will sail, and then we're excited this summer to be sending them out on ships around the country. So what do our teachers do at sea? First, as I mentioned, they participate in the research as fully as possible, and that does look different depending on what kind of research survey the teacher is placed on. But we send them out to be a member of the science crew, and they may be assigned shifts or taught other tasks that they can help take care of while they're at sea. They also are learning about not just what it takes to live and work in sea, but also who. So careers, ocean careers are a big focus of our program. And so we encourage the teachers to spend time talking to everyone on the ship in the whole variety of roles that are needed to support research operations at sea. And then finally, our teachers write blogs. They take excellent photos and sometimes video and put this together to share their experiences with their students, but also their entire school community and sometimes the broader community beyond that. And then when they come back, they can help, they bring NOAA and NOAA's mission back into the classroom. We view our teachers as real unique ambassadors for NOAA's work to communities around the country, including in a lot of places where people have never heard of NOAA or they don't know why we would be conducting research at sea. And so as part of their requirements, once they get home, the teachers create and test out an ocean science lesson plan, another lesson plan or activity related to the careers on the ship. And then they either give an article, give a presentation or write an article for any level of audience or something, but to help get the word out about our program and about NOAA's work. And then what comes next, as I've mentioned a couple times, we have an active Teacher at Sea Alumni Association that is supported through a partnership with the National Marine Sanctuaries Foundation. And so through them, once the teachers complete their requirements and kind of become official alumni, they work with Brita and the Alumni Association and for kind of additional opportunities, such as attending conferences and workshops. We've done a series of regional workshops with them. We really try to connect them to NOAA resources. In the past few years, since the pandemic started, we launched virtual book clubs with the teachers around the country for ocean and coastal science topics. And then in the past couple of years, they have piloted these courses about incorporating marine technology into the classroom. So a lot having to do with ROVs, like having students build ROVs, and then also different kinds of sensors for collecting data, and then all with this idea of incorporating that into lessons. And so here is my contact information is here, and I've also listed Jennifer. If you're interested in learning more, if you're interested in hosting a teacher at some point, please reach out to us. We also have our website, teacheratsea.noaa.gov, is kind of part of the fisheries website, but that we try to have the basic info there, and you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram. So that is my part, and I will pass it over to Jenny now.
Okay, well, I'm honored to have been invited to speak in the webinar series about my experience aboard NOAA Ship Bell M, Shimada. And thank you to the entire crew of the Shimada on leg 3 of the survey. And particularly Emily, Britta, and Jennifer, I felt very well cared for and very well prepared. And that's all due to their excellent execution of this program. A special shout out to Alicia Billings, who gave me a tour of the Hatfield Marine Science Campus, which I'll tell you more in a little bit about that. And then thanks to the NOAA Central Library for hosting. And I have to give you a special shout out because a colleague of mine recently met one of your ranks. I don't know which NOAA librarian or where they were stationed, but they were very starstruck by what you do. And so thank you for keeping the research in perpetuity so that we can continue to learn from it. So my students love graphic novels and puns. So when I saw this hatchetfish and lanternfish on the wet lab table, I couldn't resist a little bit of uh, anthropomorphic exchange. So he said, the hatchetfish is saying, so what did you think of the Teacher at Sea experience on the Shimada? The lanternfish says, it was illuminating, and that's not just my photophores talking. So haha, my kids have a variety of responses when I give them a silly pun. Sometimes they come up with them on their own too. So I'm currently a teacher librarian with Portland Public Schools, and this is my 20th year as a school librarian. I do have some experience in public and special libraries, and this is my 13th year full-time in the same building in the Kenton neighborhood of North Portland, Oregon. It's a school called Peninsula Elementary School. However, my position has been just recently cut to 0.4, which means that next school year, Peninsula's library will be closed 3 out of 5 school days. So where I might be working, I could be placed in 2 different schools. I would still be full-time, but that's a little bit in flux at the moment. And these budget cuts have to do with the problematic way, in my opinion, how public education is funded in our state and where the district and state spending priorities are. But one other example of this might be if you see this bookshelf of ocean books here on Oceanography, 554.46. And as a side note, we use the Dewey Decimal System. Yes, we still use that, as opposed to the Library of Congress system, which is what the NOAA Central Library uses. So this would be an example of shortfall, because the books that you see on Oceanography here, I purchased through a Donors Choose grant. The amount that I have for new acquisitions each year is just not sufficient to keep up with new releases and awards and loss and disrepair and aged content and all of that. So it can be frustrating, lost access and instructional time for students. And I'm sorry to start off with such a downer, but something the sea teaches us about the ups and downs. It doesn't always feel pleasant, and it's important I think, to understand some of the barriers that students and educators face in continuing to provide and receive that high quality education that can then be supplemented with amazing programs like Teacher at Sea. So the way in which I strive to leave an impression on students is to marry the state and national school library curriculum standards with high interest topics such as oceans. I think the animal section, which I include fish and invertebrates and bugs and chameleons and all that sort of thing, lumped into the animal section. It's the most popular, most highly checked out of all of the nonfiction books in our library. So I know that I knew that fisheries would be the place that I wanted to be to really grab the attention and appeal of the younger audiences. And so we have 3 main strands of Oregon state standards for school libraries, and one of them is information literacy, one of them is reading engagement, and the other is social responsibility. And I probably enjoy a greater degree of academic freedom than some of my elementary classroom peers. They have to contend with adopted curriculum, and I don't. And so I teach students that the library is a growing organism where all subjects commingle, and I focus on making cross-curricular connections for students. And so they might ask, why are we learning about math in library? We're not in math class. Why are we learning about music? We're not in music class right now. We're in the library. Well, this is where all the subjects are. And I try to persuade them that information is that powerful connective tissue that makes it relevant to discuss any subject in library class, and that we don't just check out books and stuff. Like, information literacy is ocean literacy. It can be, any subject. It's information, and what matters is what we do with it. And so what I love most about my job is that I can take a personal passion and get students excited about it too. So I was supposed to show you that slide earlier when I was talking about that. So there you are. This is just a special collection that I've made from our books, and I featured 2 of the NOAA websites for to encourage students to use those when we're doing different inquiry projects. So I'm not the first teacher librarian or school librarian to participate in Teacher at Sea, actually. I think I'm about the 7th. And as I said, this is kind of a passion. I've had a lifelong passion for outdoors, the outdoors, outdoor activities, been kind of considered myself an armchair natural scientist, if you will. So even though I'm grounded in the humanities, I have a Bachelor of Arts in Comparative Literature, I've continuously sought out experiences that challenge my comfort zone. And in education, we call it our zone of proximal development, like with when the degree with which we're able to understand and process new information. And I like to get out and try new things. And I also think that as an educator, it's really important to keep the experience of being a student present. So that's where the Teacher at Sea program really shines, because especially coming from a non-traditional, non-science background, I was very much a student and just absorbing all of that information, and that helps me keep in mind how my students are also learning and processing information. So I've done some past work with national parks. They have a similar program called Teacher, Ranger, Teacher. And that led to me being an advocate for what's now known as the Every Kid in a Park, the Every Kid Outdoors initiative. It was originally Every Kid in a Park. And I introduced students to parks by first situating them from kind of a civic standpoint, a civic lens, where we look at the different levels of government. So that's how I decided to also introduce students to NOAA. And I explained to them that understanding how NOAA fits into our government is a little bit like the Matryoshka dolls in Eastern Europe and in Russia. And they have their place in our government, and the department itself is kind of like this series of nesting dolls. And so that's something tangible that they can grab onto and help them understand the more kind of complex graphic. This next one, here we go, of how government works. We have the Constitution and the 3 branches of government, and then each of those branches oversees a variety of federal departments, and there's 15 departments, and the Department of Commerce is one of those. And that is important because that is where NOAA is housed, under the Department of Commerce. Department of Commerce has actually 13 arms, and NOAA is just one of those, which, without getting too political, I think says a little something about what type of value is ultimately placed on NOAA science. But I actually think that works to NOAA's advantage, because when we put that dollar amount to fisheries and different resources and the impact of climate on economies, then there is more of a sense of urgency, perhaps, than there would be otherwise, because we're all interested in making a living ultimately. So NOAA has multiple branches as well. And our survey is made possible by NOAA Fisheries and a partnership with the NOAA Marine and Aviation's operations, which has NOAA Corps is a part of that, one of the 8 uniformed services in the United States. So then, so that would include the military branches, but this is a non-military branch, but they're uniformed. The health service is the other uniform branch. And that was something that I was not really on my radar or my awareness. And my students, of course, were familiar with the military branches, but also didn't know about the unsung heroes in NOAA Corps and the health service. So here I am on the Shimada, and one of the most frequently asked questions is, what is that fish that you're holding? It's a type of ribbon fish called king of the salmon, and the Maka tribes have traditional knowledge and memory in saying that this particular fish would appear prior to the first salmon runs of the season. And so it's the king of the salmon, even though it is not related to the salmon at all, and it is in the ribbonfish family. Here we have also on the right-hand side the CO and the XO of the Shimada while I was at sea. The officers change. They keep them moving about throughout the country. And so they're not necessarily in the same positions, and it helps keep them fresh. And they were two people that I was able to interview during the kind of career-focused part of the commitment that Emily mentioned earlier. So here's the Shimada, Bell M Shimada, and it's part of a large fleet of ships that are used by NOAA, and they're also airplanes. I believe in the past they've also had Teacher in the air with NOAA, not just Teacher at sea. And they also have created these trading cards. So this is something fun that I can use with students, and we can look at the other transportation vessels. If you remember those Richard Scarry books from when you were a kid, things that go or things that move, there's always some kids that really gravitate toward the trucks, big trucks and big equipment and stuff. So this is something that grabs their attention. It was built, one fun fact about the Shimada is that it was built on the East Coast, and so it had to come through the Panama Canal to get to the West Coast and to Newport, Oregon. And there's still one member of the crew on board when I was there that had been with the ship from its beginning, from when it was first commissioned, and he went through the Panama Canal with the ship. So what was I doing out there? So I was a part of the science crew, and they're pictured here. And I was a part of leg 3 of 5 different legs that were in partnership with Canada. So there's a joint US-Canada integrated ecosystem and Pacific hake acoustic trawl survey that happens, I believe, every other year. And so the Canadians pick up where we leave off up in Washington. And so there was one member of the science crew who I believe was on all 5 of the legs this year. So that's a long haul, a long time to be in and out at sea. That was Ethan Byer, and he was the lead in the wet lab. So hake, what is hake? That is probably the first question that people ask me when they, students and peers, colleagues, family members alike. I've never heard of this fish. Like, what is it? It's kind of a flaky white fish, and it's actually is the biggest fishery on the West Coast. And the U.S. and Canada have a total allowable catch that NOAA advises them on, that they, in the commercial fishing industry, like how much they can take from the stock each year. And so there are also, I mentioned the Maka tribe earlier, they conduct a fishery as well. And they make up about 17.5% of the fish taken, and then the other 82.5% are the non-tribal commercial fishers, catcher processors, and they call them motherships, which I thought was a great connection to those Matryoshka dolls. And then the shore-based vessels where they do all the fish processing. Incidentally, they're in addition to Teacher at Sea, there's it's a totally separate program, but they actually have, NOAA has an at-sea hake observer program where individuals go out and monitor the fishing vessels to kind of help with accountability and also adding to the data about what's happening in the fishery. And they've done that since about 1975. And then the Canadians, in addition to the Shimada, they have a Coast Guard ship that they used this year, the Sir John Coast Guard ship Sir John Franklin up in Canada. Another thing of note is that I just discovered the State of the Stock report came out in February. So this is like the big information package, the big document that has all the data of the results of this larger hake study that was done over the summer months. And it was really interesting reading after having been a part of it. And it was great to see, like, NOAA does such an amazing job at transparency and just making everything open source and viewable to anyone, a scientist and non-science scientist alike. And one of the things that I experienced on this, it made sense to me having been on the ship, is that one of the weaknesses of the study is that we're really only catching age 2 hake, the bigger hake, and older. And so there's not as much data about like the larval population. And in this photo, you see the little fingerlings, or the baby fish, if you will, there on the ichthy stick. And so then that can be problematic to predict future populations, because if they're not quite sure how many baby fish at the larval stage are out there, then that's something to take into account when they're making predictions for future allowable takes in the fishery. So where does this fish go? Well, it is, like I mentioned, the Department of Commerce oversees NOAA, and so there is export of the fish. There's I found for 2021 anyway. 2021 anyway was the most recent numbers I could find, but they had an export value of about $163 million, and some of those fish went to Ukraine and Nigeria and Netherlands. And the hake fishery had an economic impact of providing 4,450 jobs and generating about $335 million in income. So again, what do you do with hake? You might say to yourself, well, I go to the fish section in the supermarket. I've never seen hake there. So even though hake are the biggest fishery on the West Coast, they're not as popular yet for fillet, but perhaps supermarkets might, like they have with the Rex sole here in Oregon, fish that has not traditionally been as popular, say your salmon and your steelhead and your halibut. Due to sustainability and prevalence, since salmon are much more highly regulated and in some cases endangered, the hake could be marketed as more of a sustainable fish to be sold as a fillet in supermarket, although that, again, is not common practice. But where you might consume hake unawares is in surimi. And I heard it said that it's kind of the cubic zirconia of seafood, as opposed to your diamonds, of salmon and halibut, the more desirable fish traditionally. So what is surimi? Well, it was invented by Japanese chefs like over 900 years ago. And it's like the leaving, they're being very economical in using up all the fish that weren't being used up otherwise. And they ground it down into kind of this gel, and then it over time became more highly processed and might end up in your California roll when you're having sushi. Could be in your Subway sandwich, the seafood sensation sub, and restaurants could even be serving it to you in lobster rolls. The surimi can be used as any kind of imitation seafood, even though it is actually real seafood. They're just not telling you what kind of seafood. That's another reason that you probably haven't heard of hake outside of NOAA. It's also known as Pacific whiting, and there are I think there's about 16 or 18 different distinct species. And so they're similar to pollock or sole I mentioned, or cod. The cod, I think, is the actual. I think it shares an order, in the taxonomic order, but they're not in the same family, so they're somewhat distant. So I chose Newport, Oregon, as a preferred port of departure because it's close to home, and I wanted my students to connect to something that was nearby. Many of them have been to Newport or have at least been to the Oregon coast. And so I wanted them to be able to go there and look out at the ocean and know that there's these little hake swimming around and the impact that that has. So one of these photos here is a picture of all the different transects that we completed on leg 3. And so we steamed down to the north coast of California and then returned to Newport. So we left from Newport and returned, which is not always how it happens, but it was ideal for me because I didn't even have to fly anywhere like most teachers at sea. I just hopped in my car. I live up in Southwest Portland and drove to Newport like it was just another vacation because I've done that many years ever since I was a kid. It's been a place to go and see the Oregon Coast Aquarium and the Hatfield Marine Science Center. And there is me a year earlier prior to sailing, and the Shimada is somewhere there behind me because I was originally selected in the class of 2020, which, as you recall, was kind of a year that was shut down everywhere. And so my sailing was delayed by 3 years. And then that medical examination that Emily mentioned, had to do that a couple of times, had to give blood a couple of times to make sure I was still healthy enough to go to sea. And that other picture is just taken right off of Google Maps there at the bottom. It says NOAA Mach P. So that stands for the Marine Operations Center of the Pacific. And so Newport, Oregon quietly harbors the Shimada that is called out to service on many different types of surveys on the West Coast. Okay, so I mentioned that Hatfield Marine Science Center. So that is a campus of buildings that is not only just has to do with Oregon State University. This is an extension of their like marine science department. But there are also there's also NOAA buildings there as well. And so I got a tour prior to sailing of the campus, since they have NOAA has a special relationship with the Science Center. And we went into the Gwynn Library. And I was impressed to find they had a children's section and saw a lot of familiar titles. And they also had a book cart of deaccession materials or weeded books that they no longer needed in the collection. And so I was able to take home this souvenir copy of the proceedings of the West Coast Squid Symposium from 1983, which would just, as a nature nerd, I was just very excited to find this. And I also liked that it was a tangible item I could use in the classroom to show students the connection between the science at sea and reporting the findings, and then housing the report in libraries so that scientists and researchers can learn from those prior surveys and experiments. One such from long ago, I'm able to model in NOAA Central Library's catalog. And so we just bring up the catalog, and in about students in 3rd grade and up is what I do this with. And we connect it to their familiarity with our school library catalog. And we look at the different ways you can manage your search and limit it to just books or certain types of resources. And so they're aware that, some things you may only be able to view online, like ebooks and whatnot. But the concept of open source and public domain is new to them. So this is a great opportunity to introduce those terms in the context of the NOAA experience. And we just do a search for hake. And so we look at the parts of the public record, and I have them talk me through how to get to this PDF that you see the cover of here on the left-hand side where it says Pacific Hake. And then we can look inside the report. And then it also provides the opportunity to talk about special libraries. They're familiar with the school library. They go to the public library that they have in their neighborhood, a branch of the Multnomah County Library. We talk about how there's NOAA is a special library, that there's medical and legal and corporate and museum and archival libraries, scientific libraries. And so that kind of it helps expand their view of what a library is and can do in all the different places that they're embedded in different industries. So after teaching them about open source, then we use an actual source that we had in the wet lab on the Shimada to help identify different species in the bycatch that we weren't sure what they were. And so they learn about how books are cataloged. I mentioned the Dewey Decimal System, and that they can give you clues as to their relationship with nearby books. So, for example, sharks are a type of fish, and they appear next to each other on the shelf, the white sharks and the tiger sharks and the leopard sharks. And then right nearby are the salmon and whatnot, because they are related in the larger fish family. So as I mentioned, this resource appeared in the wet lab, and it's also available in the catalog. So we do an activity where I print out not all 453 pages, but a select portion, and then I give them images from the bycatch, which we see here on the next slide. And I wouldn't, have already identified them. They wouldn't have the labels, jack mackerel and lamprey and grenadier fish. But then they would use these helping guide them to the correct identification by giving them select portions of the book. So then they can do a little practice trying to having the joy and the fun of identifying different species. So what is the bycatch? Well, it's what also comes in on the net along with the hake. And the scientists are using, targeted acoustics in order to, limit the catch to just as much hake as possible. We don't want to catch things like the Chinook salmon there. I told the kids, I really shouldn't be smiling because this is a highly regulated species, but occasionally you get some of those in there, and it is useful because all of the bycatch is sorted and weighed at least, and it informs other research. It can tell you things about the health of the salmon population. Some species require additional documentation. We might also measure them and sex them. And then everything goes down the chute back to the ocean where it's returned to the food chain. And here I have to tread with a little bit of caution for elementary, because I learned early on when I had a lesson where I brought in a rabbit pelt with a kindergarten class. One little girl ended up in tears because she said, "Well, the rabbit died." It's like, yes, this is just the pelt. The rabbit died. But that's an interesting tangent that we can go down and talk about scientific ethics and the fact that some animals do die in the name of science, but what is the cost benefit? So we can have some pretty high level conversations you might be surprised by at the elementary school level about that. So at the Hatfield Marine Science Center, they conduct a variety of different research, and they partner with NOAA. We had two kind of independent contractors who were working with Oregon State University to also, in addition to the hake survey, study marine mammals and birds. And so they were up on the flying deck all day at the very top of the ship, and with their binoculars looking out for different species. So we have the brown booby, and you can imagine how fifth graders might respond to that name. And we have what was first thought to be a porbeagle shark, but we decided that it really is probably a salmon shark. And that what helped us there, the students and I, was that we were looking at, like I showed on the previous slides, the different identification, species guides. And we saw that the porbeagle has like a certain kind of white marking that's on that top fin, or at the back of the fin rather, and it just didn't make sense for the porbeagle to be there. And so we thought, well, that must be a salmon shark then. And then my students noticed when we were kind of digging into, we're doing some Googling, some online research, I guided them to the NOAA Fisheries Species Directory. And we actually do sharks are a perennially popular topic at the elementary school level. So I read them this book, Truth or Lie Sharks, and we learn all kinds of shark facts. And they were noticing that the salmon shark and the brown cat shark, which was one of the species that came in the bycatch, wasn't in the species directory. So some of my student impressions or questions they have for NOAA was why are some species included and not others? So they would be interested to hear from NOAA fisheries or NOAA scientists, like, are you still working on this? They wanted to know, can they help, write about the brown catfish and add to the directory? We have here in Oregon, Oregon History Encyclopedia, and it allows, kind of in the tradition of a Wikipedia style or kind of crowdsourcing the information. They have individuals that can submit topics to be included with the encyclopedia. So our idea was, well, perhaps we can help NOAA out with that. So that's all credit to the kids noticing what information is there and what isn't. They also noticed that here on the left, there was a brochure online, or this flyer, about sharks that can be legally retained in these different bodies of water: the Atlantic Ocean, the Caribbean Sea, and the Gulf of Mexico. And then they again noticed, well, where's the Pacific? We're on the Pacific Ocean. Where's the equivalent flyer? And so that led to, great opportunity for scientific inquiry. And I teach them that all research is finding the answer to a question. And of course, that's, simplified. But we haven't found all the answers yet. But that's the exciting part of doing research is first just forming a question and kind of the story of how we come upon these inquiry questions and then go about investigating them. That's also a part of the fun, is the process of research, and try to make research exciting to them instead of, the boring animal report, or the stereotype of like reporting about something that you don't really have a connection to. So I think there's ways that like the NOAA Teacher at Sea program, where you can give a more tangible, real connection to, how smelly the research can be, how real the research really is and can be, and not just, looking up something in a dusty book. So in addition to the hake survey, in addition to the mammal and bird observations going on, there's also a lot of other oceanographic data that we got about microorganisms from the vertical net sampling that we did. And that happened during the daytime. And then we also had the phytoplankton imaging going on. And there's this very fancy machine that you see on the left that was processing seawater that came in through a special series of pipes, and then went through this software program where it captured images of different phytoplankton, so the scientists could figure out the movements of different algal blooms and things that they might be concerned with or need to communicate to fisheries and coastal populations about. And then at night, even though these are pictures of the apparatus during the day, the eDNA sampling happened at night. So I stayed up late one night in order to see this happen. And this contraption, they called it the cake altogether. And then those individual cylinders are what they call the fish. And then at different depths, they collect water. And then it goes through, that's Samantha. She's in the chem lab and is prepping some of the eDNA to then go under further study back on the shore when the Shimada goes back into port. And so the eDNA can also, in addition to the physical fish, give us the signatures of other animals that have been nearby. So again, not just I tell the kids, yes, they're looking for fish poop, and they love that. But it's also, the scale, just like the detritus that humans leave behind, your fingernail clippings, your skin and your hair. It's the same thing in the ocean. It's there's all kinds of little particles and floating around, and that can give us clues about what's swimming around out there. So Emily mentioned the careers as a part of, as one of the two lessons that teachers at sea are committed to doing. And that was one of my favorite parts of the experience, talking to just a whole variety of people about their jobs on the ship. And I believe I made it around to at least one representative from each of the different specialty areas, from the science crew, from the deck crew, the engineering crew. They call it the surveys crew, where they're working closely with, that's Vince, who's working with all the wires there at the ball cap and the ponytail. And I tell the kids his job on the ship was like, they're familiar with like the IT department because they hear us talking about it at school, and how they support different software and whatnot. And I said, he's like the IT guy, only way cooler because he is doing like anything. He's helping fix and maintain systems of most all types of technology that aren't already under the Department of the Engineers. And so when something goes wrong with the survey equipment, like I showed you the cylinders from the eDNA survey and whatnot, there was some equipment failure while I was on board, and I got to observe how they were troubleshooting how to fix that while at sea. They got to get creative when the technology fails and it's impacting the survey. Well, what can we do to salvage this and move on and make it work to the best we can? So he was a fount of knowledge, and really interesting to talk to him and hear about his career. And I have to commend the all of, besides fisheries, all of the other arms I mentioned. The nesting dolls earlier, and the different arms of NOAA besides fisheries, and the NOAA Marine and Aviation operations that NOAA Corps is a part of. There's also the National Weather Service and the NOAA satellites and the National Ocean Service. And all of those, when you go to each of their websites, they have resources for educators. So on behalf of educators, thank you. We notice, we use those. In my opinion, often school district curriculum committees would do well to consider these types of resources and promote them as a free and open source way of adding high quality science curriculum to the classrooms. You don't get a better real world connection to curriculum than from an agency made up of active practitioners of that very subject, and often from the teachers at sea who go out and act as ambassadors to represent and know how to write a lesson plan, or collaborate with the departments to how best translate that science into terms and activities that K-12 students are going to understand. It was interesting to me to see where the NOAA Central Library was housed among the kind of networked nesting dolls of the NOAA department. And it made me think about my own library department and how it's been kind of categorized and nested over the years within our own district, because I'm in a large district. And so sometimes it fluctuates between maybe an academic department or a student support services department. So we're able, again, to make a real world connection with the kids and say, look at how, we're trying to dispel, at least I am as an educator, to dispel the notion of like these different subjects in a silo, and emphasize to them, that math does not just happen in math class. Science doesn't just happen in science class. Like it's all connected. The economics and the humanities and the science, those make up our world, and the humans operating in that world need to understand those complex relationships. And that's kind of one of my high level, high minded, kind of overall goals that I'm trying to persuade students of and get them to understand. So I teach fourth graders about primary and secondary sources. And the NOAA Library's collections are rich with examples. And I encourage any school librarians or science teachers who might watch this in the future to make use of these. And my impression overall is that NOAA is an exemplary government model as far as partnering with educators, and should be used to improve the transparency perhaps of other agencies in terms of documentation and inviting citizen scientists, educators to participate and be embedded in the process. And I believe NOAA is absolutely living up to our democratic, or at least my democratic ideals of being by the people and for the people. And in fact, college students can volunteer if you're associated with a university or college. We had a grad student with us in the wet lab who's totally volunteering and was helping with the biological sampling and research operations at sea as well. So there's a real world example of those careers in action of someone in process and interested in the topic, and getting boots on the ground early before he even is entered the profession and still in the education phase. And that's just a wonderful part of NOAA that is just invaluable to continuing to recruit and engage people to continue to fill up the ranks of future generations of NOAA employees. So I give you a blue award, give you a first place from a citizen scientist, educator perspective on your resources. And I believe NOAA Central Library will make all of these links. These are all live links. Or you can also just go to the NOAA Central Library, and most of these are just in their collections. So I haven't used all of these yet, but I plan to have these if I haven't used them, and have all kinds of ideas for how to incorporate the resources into future lessons, and then also widely sharing them in kind of my circle of educators and librarians as well. One specific example that I'll leave you with, I had that picture of the alien ocean animals earlier. So I've found that doing a lesson about the deep sea and the deep dark places in the ocean is highly engaging. And so I've read about these strange creatures, like you saw pictures of the hatchet fish and the viper fish earlier in the bycatch, with the crazy looking teeth and the wild eyes and the phosphorescence that happens. So I've read them these two books before, and then found in the NOAA library resources video clips of actual dives, and that was very exciting to me. And so I'm able to take lessons also that I already do and just make them all the better by using real world clips of science that they can just see from their desk. And then we look at on the right hand side where you see the rainbow colors of the ocean floor. I can give them examples of the dive summary, where it happened, and like the kind of science that they were doing, like why they were down there and whatnot. So that's very exciting. So not only was this beneficial in like learning about hake, a fish that none of us had really ever heard of before, and hearing its economic impact and how they're useful, but the experience for me also enhanced lessons that I already do, and so it was very invaluable in that regard. Just informed a lot of things. So I think we're going to move into we've just a little bit of time left for some questions and answers, but I can put, there's a little video clip. I took a little bit of video footage, and there's a bunch more pictures. I have a link that will take you to kind of a storybook version, kind of a photo story of the experience. And then of course the blog, if you haven't checked it out. It's just great reading, looking at all the other vast library of teacher at seas and reading about their experience, which often is wildly different from mine. So those are all very informative as well. So thank you, NOAA, for this experience. I can't recommend the program enough. It's just highly organized and highly invaluable to my practice. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jenny. This is great. So we're we have a few minutes left, and I don't see any questions yet in the question panel. So I'm just going to give folks a moment to put some questions in, and just say thank you so much to Emily and Jenny. If you want to turn your cameras on, you can give a final kind of wave to everyone. And but thank you so much for doing this. This is awesome. And Jenny, thank you so much for the kudos for the NOAA Central Library. We're very, very happy that you found all of those resources and found them helpful. That's amazing. So I'm not seeing questions, but I do have questions for you. What was the most kind of shocking thing about life aboard the ship, or your favorite thing? You could do kind of both.
Okay, shocking. Well, there's the inevitable confrontation with seasickness. And so I did discover that I'm more of a fair weather sailor. And I discovered that being closer to shore often helped with the wave action when the seas got to a certain wave height. I could immediately correlate that with how my stomach felt. Did take some medication and learned about various ways that you can mitigate it, and had a wonderful roommate, or berth mate, I should say, or state roommate, Julia Clemens, part of the science team. And everyone is just so supportive and, assured me that even the most seasoned sailors still have to contend with the ups and downs of the ocean. So that was the most shocking, in part because I had these high hopes that it wouldn't bother me as much. I love water. Been a swimmer all my life, and boats on the inner, been on some boats on the inner waters, lakes and rivers and such, but there's nothing quite like that ocean swell. So that was a little bit shocking. My favorite part was just having the privilege of being entrusted to help do the science, and got to use the CLAMS software. There's a lot of fun acronyms, it seems, in any industry, and so they'd come up with the software is actually built by NOAA folks that help track different data points that we were taking on the hake and other species in the wet lab. So being able to slice open the fish and identify the different parts, and help collect the otoliths, which are the ear bones that scientists use to age the fish. And that was all just really fascinating to me. As I said, I'm kind of a nature enthusiast, and I just love that part of it. Doing the science itself and being able to get my hands dirty and smell bad, and I don't mind that. I like getting dirty and doing the actual subject. And then, as I mentioned in the presentation, be able to have those real world examples to bring it alive for kids, and have it not be so disconnected from their daily life, so that they can access and ultimately, hopefully, some of them choose the science fields as a profession.
Thank you so much, Jenny and Emily. I put in the chat just quickly the director and Emily as the program coordinator's information for Teacher at Sea. And I hope any educators out there do consider this as an option. Jenny was, I would say, giving the most excellent and appropriate testimonial today. So I hope everyone had a wonderful time listening to this presentation. I did. Thank you so much, Jenny and Emily. We're a little over time, so I'm going to end it now. But if you do have questions, please feel free to reach out to Emily or the library itself, and we can pass those questions or messages on. Thank you so much, everyone, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.